We accept the reality of the world with which we're presented. It's as simple as that.
We no longer live in a world of nations and ideologies, Mr. Beale. The world is a business, Mr. Beale.
Go on without me. Just go.
A good soldier never leaves a man behind.
Because I wouldn't give you 2 cents for all your fancy rules if behind them they didn't have a little bit of plain, ordinary, everyday kindness.
Life finds a way.
Welcome to Silver Screen Biases. Each week we pick a movie off of IMDb's Top 250 and dig into it. We're examining truth claims in critically acclaimed movies while also examining our own biases. I'm Nelson.
This is Jeff.
And this week we're joined by
Broc.
Tell us a bit about yourself, Broc.
Yeah, so I'm 33 years old. I had to think about that for a bit. I live in Ashland, Ohio. Actually work for a community bank here for almost 10 years now, around the Wayne County area. Gosh, let's see. Oh, I'm married. I should probably get that in there, else I'll get in trouble about that. Hobbies that I've been involved with for an extended period of time. I actually do a little bit of running, and also I race 410 sprint cars and been doing that for an extended period of time.
Okay. How appropriate.
Is that, I don't know hardly anything about cars or racing. Is that dirt track, asphalt track?
It's dirt track.
Dirt track.
So, yep, dirt ovals.
Dirt ovals. Are those more like demolition derby style events where people get like really crashed up pretty regularly, or is it a little bit more?
It's. I would say, I mean those things do happen.
Sure.
In sprint car racing, it's a pretty organized form of racing, I guess you could say. There's a lot of guys when you think of some of the big NASCAR stars that are out there: Kyle Larson, Jeff Gordon, Tony Stewart. It's actually where they kind of cut their teeth.
All of which have been in our backyard here before.
Yes. Yeah.
And on our podcast.
No, not our podcast. You're thinking of a different
Future.
Tony Stewart. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of a wild form of racing. Sprint cars, they look way different than your standard, I guess, vehicle that you drive to work every day. 410 cubic inch engine. They usually get anywhere from, I'd say about 850, about 950 horse. And really what sets them apart is the weight too as well. They're really light cars. I think with a driver, the weight limit or the weight rule is 1,500 pounds.
Minimum
Really?
or maximum?
Maximum.
Wow.
Or I'm sorry, minimum. I apologize.
Okay.
Minimum. So there's guys that actually have to add weight at times to the car.
So you just glue some pennies to the bottom side?
Yeah. Throw some lead on it. Way you go.
Wow.
It's kind of crazy to think that years ago they used to actually not have a weight rule, and the weights used to get just crazy light. So it's a crazy fast race car. Extremely exciting. They're open wheel cars. Crashes are usually pretty spectacular.
What's open wheel? I know nothing about.
Yeah, so when you think about race cars, a lot of people think about Formula One, NASCAR, IndyCar. Sprint cars, I would say, more closely associated with like an IndyCar.
Yep.
So the wheels actually sit beyond the fenders.
Okay.
So kind of the profile of the car, the way it's laid out, it really develops a lot of speed. For instance, you watch NASCAR and you compare that to an IndyCar. The IndyCar, a lot of times, well, I think all the time, is going to carry more speed than the NASCAR, the Cup cars.
Okay.
So it's a wild form of racing. It's a cool form of racing, and more people should watch it and follow it.
I 100% agree. Like if you've never been to Wayne County Speedway, Nels, like take a pair of goggles, wear it for the whole event. If you take it off, it'll look like you've been tanning all day. Like it's just a dirty event, but it's amazing.
When are we going?
Well, we'll get to that. You got any races coming up that we can come?
Yeah. So actually, probably here over the coming weeks, we'll be at Wayne County. I've kind of backed off my racing a little bit here as I've gotten older with other things in life. The last couple of years, I haven't raced a ton, but about a handful of times. I actually just raced this last Saturday night. And we're going to try to do a little bit more racing this summer.
Nice.
But yeah, I'll be at Wayne County and different racetracks across Ohio.
If we're able to, when this episode airs, for the listeners, we'll if you guys are
2 weeks from today,
if you guys are in the area, we'll post up some dates and stuff and some locations you can come catch Broc race, and
do you
can catch Nelson and Jeff there at the race.
Yeah.
Broc, we were so excited to have you on this show today, and before we get to what movie we're talking about, which some of you may have already kind of guessed the genre of movie we're talking about, we got a couple questions we like to ask our guests. So first one here, what's your political bias? Where would you say you are politically?
Yeah, so I would say, as a person, I lean more libertarian.
Yes.
I figured you'd enjoy that. I've kind of might not like this. I probably backed off a little bit of those some of those libertarian views as I've gotten older, as it seems everyone does, to a certain extent.
I've only gotten more radical.
You've gone the total opposite direction of that.
It's a bell curve, right?
It is. It is. By the time I'm, 100 years old, I'll probably, have a little red book and be spouting Mao and stuff like that. Hopefully that's not the case. But I would say I've been a registered Republican my entire life. I would say more of like a Ron Paul libertarian.
Yeah.
I definitely think that there's a place for the government, but I feel like that place is usually limited. I feel like they do more harm than honestly good in most cases, whether that's anything from, national defense to different regulations that they're involved in different industries. They just have a tendency to expand and continue to expand. So, yeah, definitely a small government libertarian.
Awesome. What's your religious bias? How would you describe yourself when it comes to faiths or stuff like that?
Honestly, I don't know if I have much of one. It's kind of funny. I feel like a lot of people in the racing world probably are kind of that way. I would say most of us consider ourselves Christians, but I couldn't tell you the last time I've actually been to church. I never really grew up going to church.
Gotcha.
Honestly, probably from like a guilty standpoint, it's probably like the old saying, there's no atheists in foxholes. Like racing, it can be kind of a dangerous game.
Yeah.
at
Never
times.
heard that before. That's great. That's great.
Yeah. So I think sometimes that like kind of creeps in because, there's obviously a form of danger and, those chances of being hurt or even death. My wife, it's kind of funny. The most time I spent going to church was actually with my wife. She comes from a pretty religious background. We're actually expecting our first daughter coming up.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that.
Male or female?
Female.
We'll get her a t-shirt.
We'll wait until we'll wait until they're old enough to decide for themselves.
Oh, good
my
Lord.
bad.
Yeah.
My bad.
With Samantha, I spent a lot of time going to church with her. So I definitely see, the positives that church brings into people's lives. I'm probably like most people. I feel like organized religion, all the good things they do, there's also a lot of drawbacks, I feel like.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I've never really had like that calling to always go to church and be involved in church. And some of that truthfully comes down to the activities I've been involved with. With racing, it's on Saturday night.
Right,
it's usually really late nights. This last night, that we raced this last Saturday, actually, I basically got home to my house at 3 a.m.
Yeah.
So it makes it
for an early morning.
Yes. Yeah. So
that.
it gives me all the excuses I need to probably avoid it. But yeah, that's I guess that's a little bit of my religious background.
Oh,
Okay.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing. And last but not least, what's your favorite movies? How would you describe yourself when it comes to the small screen or big screen?
Yeah. So I'm kind of all over the place. Actually, if I had to say there's one genre of movies that I'm not crazy about, it'd probably be horror movies.
Okay.
But with that being said, one of my, I would say like one of my top 10 favorite movies is The Shining.
Oh.
As crazy as that is.
Right
So
on.
it kind of goes back and forth. I'm a little bit all over the place. I do like a lot of, I would say maybe action type movies or thrillers. Like I love Seven. No Country for Old Men is one of my top films.
All three of these are IMDb top 250 movies.
I think Broc
Really?
just wants to come back onto another episode.
Yeah.
Naming more movies we haven't talked about yet.
It is funny because I probably don't have the knowledge you guys do about movies.
I wouldn't say knowledge.
Yeah. But as I've gotten older, I feel like I've become kind of a movie snob, where like a lot of films that I probably would have liked when I was younger, I absolutely hate. My wife and I are on totally two different planes when it comes to movies. She wants to watch
Hallmark movies?
yes, and goofy movies and things like that, where I want to watch, No Country for Old Men, and my wife just found the ending of that movie just absolutely stupid, which I thought it was genius.
Don't spoil it. I have not seen that yet.
Yeah, I will
It's
not.
it's on our list.
Yeah. It turns out the guy was dead the whole time.
Nelson, that's the wrong movie.
Wrong spoiler? Turns out he was his father.
Now I can't watch The Sixth Sense.
Oh man.
Right on.
Yeah, so I'm kind of all over the place.
That's the best way to be, I think.
Yeah, I like a wide variety. Samantha jokes around with me because I wouldn't say I have a favorite movie. I have about 50 in my top 10. And I always say that. I always tell her that. This is one of my top 10 movies. And at this point, if you actually counted them all off, it'd probably be around 50 or so.
That's fantastic. You have
So-
subcategories. So.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
It counts. It counts. Awesome. Broc, thank you for sharing that stuff. I assume some of this stuff will come back up in our conversation here. So let's say what movie we talking about today, Nils?
Well, as Brock already mentioned, he does dirt track racing, and we thought it was really important to get a driver to cover this specific movie.
Yes.
Actually, more specifically, my dad insisted that when we eventually get to this movie, we have a driver. We're doing Ford v Ferrari.
Yes.
Ford v Ferrari came out around the same time as Rush. Both of them are in the top 250. I've not seen Rush.
Neither have I.
I had seen Ford v
Broc
Ferrari
has
before
seen
this.
Rush, though.
Brock has. You've seen Rush.
He's seen both of these, yeah.
So, Brock, of these two, without getting into worldview and stuff in the movie, just like from a driver's standpoint, which of these two movies is the better movie, like as far as honesty to racing, and then which of these two is the better movie just as far as enjoyability, or is it the same movie?
Man, that's a good question. So I would say from a racing perspective, I feel like the racing scenes in Rush are actually better than Ford versus Ferrari. I will say, from my perspective, I actually enjoyed Ford versus Ferrari a little bit more. I'm one of those people, I like sometimes the deeper meaning in films, especially films around sports or different competitions in general. So for me, if I had to lean one way, I'd probably lean more towards the Ford versus Ferrari when it comes to the better film. When it comes to just strictly the racing scenes, probably Rush. It's an older movie. I actually think the best film that's ever depicted actual racing scenes is the film Le Mans, which was actually directed, I believe, in the accident too, by Steve McQueen. Okay. So if you're ever looking for a film that's very specific to just like the racing scenes and how great the racing scenes are,
Le Mans.
Yes, Le Mans. And I think the reason behind that is Steve McQueen actually raced in his free time. I think a lot of times when you look back at old interviews, that's actually what he enjoyed more so than even acting.
Was he good?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
So there's him and actually Paul Newman was a very good race car driver himself too.
Because I often wonder, like for example, Frankie Muniz, I often wonder, is he good or is it that he has the money to do this as an expensive hobby?
I would say both.
Yeah.
So I just watched a race that Frankie was in this last weekend, actually the last couple weekends. He's in the ARCA series, which is a development series for NASCAR. And I will say I'm pretty impressed from what I've seen of Frankie. Initially, when I had heard that he was getting into racing and starting to get elevated, a big part of racing anymore is having that corporate backing or those funds behind you.
Yeah.
It seems to even outweigh maybe talent, honestly, to a certain extent nowadays at the highest form of racing. But Frankie looks, I mean, I think he's very capable of being a good race car driver.
I've seen some interviews with him just because I was super curious about that too. And my dad grew up a big NASCAR fan. Mm-hmm. Well, I grew up with my dad who was a big NASCAR fan. Been to a bunch of NASCAR races and stuff as a kid. Brock, you and I actually back in high school, we used to go to NASCAR Daytona parties and stuff.
Yep.
Yeah, like racing itself is something I can get excited about and I enjoy watching. So when I saw Frankie was there, I was like, I gotta see what this is all about. And some of the interviews and stuff post races and some of the clips I've seen, I don't have cable, so I haven't really watched much live races in the last couple of years. But he seems like serious about it. Like it's not just something like, oh, I want to see. Like he's very intense when it comes to like his reviews of himself, the way he handled. Like I'm very impressed just how he's representing himself as someone who's new to the industry. Yeah, so I think it's exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think things I've seen from Frankie so far that I think is pretty cool is obviously the notoriety he has and the funds he has too as well, the corporate backing. Can propel you so much quicker through the racing world. And not saying that he hasn't got more opportunities than a lot of guys that, race at your local racetracks, which he definitely has, but he hasn't gone to the extreme of where he's getting into like a truck series ride already, which is kind of it's like the third down division in NASCAR, but it's a launching platform for the Cup Series, which is the premier series for NASCAR. Him even doing some of the, kind of asphalt late model races out west and incorporating that into ARCA shows me that he wants to learn and get better. He doesn't want to just get to the pinnacle. He wants to get to the pinnacle when he's acquired all those different skills. And I think that in itself is very respectful.
Cool. Yeah.
There's another kind of semi-current event. It's old now, but I never heard kind of like the wrap up of it. But I'm sure you know.
Pearl Harbor.
Yeah. What happened there?
I think the Germans.
A movie with Josh Hartnett. No, sorry. Go on.
I don't think Josh Hartnett's the biggest name in that movie. So recently,
I'm going to fact check that.
Keep going. Some NASCAR designed cars were in some European races that also do right-hand turns.
Yes. Yes.
And from what I understand, they were doing very well, right?
Yeah, they did well. So recently, the 24-hour Le Mans, which is kind of the pinnacle race in Ford versus Ferrari, I think just took place here a couple weeks ago, if I'm not mistaken. So NASCAR kind of had a pretty neat concept, and honestly, I wasn't too in tune with this until I saw it happen, so I might be messing some of this up. But they basically brought a car to Le Mans that is similar to some of the future design types for NASCAR.
Oh, okay, okay. So it's not like a typical NASCAR car. It is what NASCAR could be in the future.
Yes.
Like a hybrid type.
Yes. Yeah, and it still does share some of the commonalities with like the current NASCAR Cup car that they're running. But they took a group of guys over. So I think Jimmy Johnson was on the team.
The Subway guy?
Yeah, yes. Yeah, the ex football coach of the Dallas Cowboys, I believe. It's crazy. Yeah, it's time for that.
They serve big pickles with those sandwiches.
So, yeah, Jimmy was on the team, which people that know racing know his background and how great of a race car driver he was. Jordan Taylor, who specifically races sports cars, so turns right frequently, along with turning left. He was on the team. And then finally, I think they might have Scott Dixon, who actually races, which I think Scott is from Australia or New Zealand. Sweet. And he races an IndyCar, if I'm not mistaken, was on the team as well. And they did well. And it was great. Some of the stuff in Ford versus Ferrari that I sometimes find annoying is not annoying, but the comments about the left-hand turns. Yeah. All you do is turn left, it's like a simplistic form of looking at how the racing breaks out, but I definitely understand the humor behind it. Yeah.
But it's one of those things where it's an easy jab. I'm Canadian, and so with that, I get all kinds of really cheap jokes about being Canadian, and I get it. Like, yeah, I'd make that joke too. Sure, it's easy, sure, it's obvious, but it's fun. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the good thing is, a lot of people in racing, they have a pretty good sense of humor. Yeah, I mean, they really do.
Unless there's like a pull string that looks somewhat like a noose.
Yes. Yeah. That doesn't fly very well.
Yeah, they don't like that.
No. And
we're not even halfway into the podcast, and that's already been brought up.
Yeah, I may have to actually leave that one right there. I won't go any deeper into that. But like Will Ferrell's movie Talladega Nights. I mean, people in racing actually love that movie.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. Almost all of my Hispanic friends really love Nacho Libre.
Yeah,
and and really, it doesn't paint Hispanic culture very accurately or positively.
It's satirical.
Yeah.
People that are self-aware can enjoy something that's satirical about something they're involved with.
Yeah, just
it makes sense.
Enjoy the joke,
So let's do some of the stats about the film we've already started talking about here. So Ford vs. Ferrari came out in 2019. It runs about 2 hours and 32 minutes. Directed by James Mangold.
What else has he done? I don't know that name.
The new Indiana Jones.
Okay.
That's coming out, The Dial of Destiny. That's him. He did Logan. He did the Wolverine.
I did like Logan. The Wolverine sucked.
He's actually connected to a Star Wars movie that's upcoming. One of the 3 that have been announced.
For the Rey.
The one that's connected to Rey Palpatine. Yeah. He did Kate and Leopold, Girl Interrupted. Those are some of the bigger ones. He also did Walk the Line, the Johnny Cash biopic.
You said Walk the Line. I thought it was Dewey Cox.
No,
that's what I was. That's the first thing.
The real one.
So
Let's Walk Hard.
I don't know. I really liked this movie.
John C. Reilly.
But all the movies you're listing, with one exception so far, I haven't enjoyed.
310 to Yuma? That's also him.
I slept through that.
Okay.
Tried.
I liked 310 to Yuma except for the ending, but that's neither here nor there. So yeah, James Mangold directed this.
Okay.
It's rated PG-13. IMDb, as of recording this episode, it's 8.1 out of 10 stars.
That's right.
It stands at 210 on the IMDb Top 250.
It debuted at 180 in November when it came out.
Okay.
And it got to 127 around Christmas, and then back down to 180 by February. And then it's kind of coasted out.
It's never been off the top 250 since, so it's held its own.
Yeah.
On Rotten Tomatoes, it's 92% tomato meter and 98 audience. So, I mean, much love for this movie.
Yeah.
Before we go super deep, just some notable cast members.
Yeah.
Matt Damon, which I'll get back to him in a second.
I've heard of him.
I have a thought about him. Christian Bale, who I thought was the standout performer.
It's our second Christian Bale movie.
Yes. Christian Bale was incredible.
Yeah.
Like,
He does such a good British accent.
I couldn't understand about half the things he said at times because it was so good.
That's his actual voice.
In some of the moments, I'm like,
he's British.
Yeah.
He usually is doing an American accent really convincingly. Yeah. That's just what he sounds like.
I had no idea about that.
I was very impressed by him. And then John Bernanke, the Punisher.
Yeah.
He's also Shane from The Walking Dead, so he's in there. So
I just watched the second season of The Bear. I love that show.
Lindsay, my wife watches The Bear. I've not watched it yet. He's only in like 30 seconds of the whole series of The Bear, but he's like the main reason the show exists.
He's got like 30 seconds in the first season, like a cameo in the first season, and in the second season he's like throughout one episode and a couple scenes.
My wife talks highly of the show. So.
You got to watch it. It's so good.
Going back to Matt Damon real quick, and then
there's a movie we're here to talk about.
I think it's fascinating that this is in a span of 4 years. Yeah, 4 years. Matt Damon's done 2 movies about like startups or about like a new product that needs to help move a company forward.
What's the other one?
The one that came out this year about the Air Jordans.
Oh yeah. I haven't seen it yet.
I'm watching this. I'm like, first of all, I mean, Matt Damon's a great actor. So I'm like, I haven't seen the new Nike movie yet, but I'm like, I feel like there's some similarities of like, we need to get this because the company needs it, and we need urgently, and like we need to do something atypical. I feel like there's going to be some matching themes between the 2 stories and stuff. So I just thought that was funny.
Yeah,
Matt Damon's good at being in those movies.
I know it's not a terribly original thought, but Matt Damon and Christian Bale are both such tremendous actors. They've only done one other movie together.
Which was that?
Thor: Love and Thunder.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Wait. Yeah, that's right. Because Christian Bale was Gore the God Butcher. Yeah.
And Matt Damon has like a cameo in it.
Yeah, he's in the last 2 Thors.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. I'm trying to think if that's all this
budget and inflation.
Yeah. Do you have the budget for me?
I have the budget for you. $97.6 million in 2019, and there's been guess how much inflation since 2019 as a percentage.
Broc, do you have a guess?
I wouldn't even know.
Cool 20% according to CPI.
I was going to throw out 12. So
of note, as Broc will attest, he's a banker, he knows this stuff. They constantly update what they use to track CPI, and so that 20% is, by some other people's numbers, it should actually be quite a lot higher than that. But going by the numbers that we are to trust, 20% inflation, that puts us at about $116 million to produce this movie again today. I'd say, I mean, it's a period piece, and they nail the visuals really, really well.
Yeah.
And then also Matt Damon and Christian Bale, like those have got to be expensive castings. But I think it's a great movie.
I was very impressed with it. So have you seen this movie before the podcast?
I did. So I think it was around 2020. It was probably in the heart of COVID. Mm-hmm. My wife and I sat down and watched it one night. And my wife, she doesn't come from like a racing background. So honestly, when I'm watching a NASCAR race, I mean, she's bored out of her mind. She's ready to move on to something else. So I didn't know if she'd actually care for the movie. I didn't know how much it was going to be just dive into racing in itself. And she loved the movie. Actually, we watched it again yesterday, and she was glued to it. So I mean, it's one of those movies where I feel like even if you don't particularly care for racing, it's just a fantastic film.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of like niche communities, right? And racing is pretty niche. If you're not into it, you're really not into it.
Yeah.
Right.
And if you're into it, you're so into it.
Yes.
And it's really interesting when they manage to nail a movie or TV show that makes you want to get invested.
Yeah.
Heels did that for me for wrestling. I've never really been particularly into
never heard of that movie.
Wrestling. It's a TV show called Heels, and it's about like these guys that have this small town gym in Georgia, and they're put on wrestling shows. I got so into that show. But yeah, this movie, I'm not a racing fan. Like, I don't know anything about cars, right? Like, at all. But like, I really got into this movie. I really enjoyed it. It sucked me right in.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it. I was excited to watch it because of knowing I didn't know anything about this story. Mm-hmm. I'm not a sports car guy. It's like I'm more familiar with like NASCARs than I am the open wheel stuff. But like I was in this movie immediately, and I was glued.
Yeah, and this is the first you'd seen it, right?
Correct. This is the first time I watched it. I'd heard about it when it came out, and it was, for me, it was one of the ones I kind of had to miss when it came out in theaters. I was interested in watching it, but I ended up bypassing it.
Yeah, I saw it shortly after it came out of theaters.
Okay.
For streaming.
I want to bring this up just because, Broc, you're here and stuff, and it's relevant. Well, 2 things. There is a Ferrari movie that's in the works.
Yep.
It's got... the information I found was kind of spotty on I don't want to say too much about it, but there is a Ferrari biopic coming. This one site said 2020. Biopic, that's what I said. Now, one site said 2023. I don't know if that's true, but that I'm very eager to watch that now. Now watching this, it's about Enzo Ferrari. Then the one that's coming out this year, I'm very excited to watch. I want to know what your opinion about is Gran Turismo.
Yeah.
Like, that movie looks amazing.
Do you play the racing games?
I do, or I did. I would say maybe not so much. Gran Turismo, that was not a game I played a ton, and I've seen a few of the trailers. I think for that, and it's taken a totally different direction than what I thought they would go with it.
Well, it's based on a true
story.
Yeah. That blows my mind.
Yeah. Because I just thought, it'd maybe go more towards the route of like what the video games are, something way over the top.
Need for Speed game movie. Yeah. That was weird.
Yeah. So
given that that's a true story, it's wild that Gran Turismo has never used that as the plot of one of their games.
Well, the racing
super compelling game. Yeah,
I've never played a Gran Turismo game. Is there much of a storyline outside of just like?
I think it's just cool cars and driving fast.
Okay, that's why.
Some of the recent ones have had stories, and it's more of a hey, you're a new racer, let's build your brand kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Need for Speed does more campaign style storylines,
and that's also more recent as well.
Yeah, So, I'm very excited for that movie. My wife even wants to see that one.
Yeah.
So we may even go see that in the theaters when that comes out.
The Ferrari film that's coming out now is
Enzo Ferrari the founder of Ferrari, or was he an inheritor?
So I believe he was the founder of Ferrari, and I could be wrong on that, but I'm not 100% sure, but I believe he is. Mm-hmm. Actually, in the racing community, there's a lot of people. It's kind of a cool name to name your kid now, Enzo. Yeah, sure. It's kind of like popular and everything. But the new film that's coming out about Ferrari, I'm not sure. Is that the one that Brad Pitt is going to be involved with? Because there was recently one of the Formula One races, which Formula One's kind of interesting because it pulls in a lot of celebrities.
Yeah.
It's a very...
Like Tony Stark?
Yes. Yeah. But I had seen where they said Brad Pitt was going to be behind a film and they were going to actually do some of the filming it's a racetrack. I think it's in the UK. It's called Spa. If you've ever played the F1
Is that where Stig always drives?
It could be, to be honest with you. That's an awesome show right there. But I'll be interested to see how that turns out. That's one thing I'll say, even about like Ford versus Ferrari. I feel like a lot of people in a lot of films haven't really nailed the feel of racing. It kind of always I don't know why. It drives me nuts when they're filming someone racing and he's in there like talking to himself, and sometimes it seems so relaxed compared to what I feel like the actual atmosphere is in a race car. And even like I felt kind of Ford versus Ferrari did that a little bit.
There's a little bit of talking inside the car in Ford v Ferrari, and it's usually him talking to other drivers. And I know just by matter of like the volume of these vehicles, there's no way the other drivers hear him. But and it's hard to say what everybody does in their car. Have you seen people like talking to other people, more like a road rage type thing, really, than anything? Talking to other drivers?
Gestures happen a lot in a race car.
I believe
so.
They sure do.
There's a. I've been on
just like the church parking lot. Too.
Yes,
many similarities from the racetrack to a church parking lot after service on your way to the buffet. Just saying.
I would say that I don't know really that much from experience about the church parking lot situations, but there's a lot of times the middle finger gets flown at guys, and I think the way like Ken Miles is kind of projected or shown in the film, kind of having like that fiery spirit is very common in the racing world.
And what about? And I know we're jumping way around and way ahead.
That's okay.
At Le Mans, Shelby is messing with the Ferrari pit crew.
Yeah. He steals the.
He steals the stopwatches.
He may have borrowed.
No. He stole. He stole several stopwatches, and then also he drops the
nut.
The nut. Does that kind of head fake stuff happen? Like I got to imagine like that's something that would get you kicked out.
Yeah, I have a hard time seeing that.
Okay.
The racing community is kind of weird because I feel like guys are willing to fight each other at any moment, but at the same time they're there for one another at any moment. And while truthfully, like cheating is a big part of racing, I should probably be careful saying that on here.
It's not politics.
Yeah.
Whoever cheats best wins.
Yes. Yeah. It's not cheating until you get caught.
Yeah.
So
like blood doping.
Yeah. Yes. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. You get into running or cycling, it's the same thing. But it's like guys will kind of bend the rules, but I don't think they would do it in that type of fashion, if that makes sense, or really try.
They hint at that in this where Miles wants to put wedges in the suspension that they're going to remove once the race actually starts so they can get the height right.
Yeah, stuff like that for sure would happen.
Interesting.
I would see guys do that.
While you guys were talking, I was looking. So Brad Pitt is connected to a Formula One movie being put on by Apple Studios. It is different than the Ferrari movie that's in production. So that one's still very much in pre-production. The Pearl Harbor did have Ben Affleck in it, to go back to that question. And then let me go back to...
I've got one kind of interesting fact before we get into this movie.
Right. I was going to finish up my Ferrari notes.
I'm sorry, there's no time.
And for the Ferrari, movie, some of the people that are allegedly attached to this movie, like I said, some sites contradict, but Adam Driver is playing Enzo Ferrari.
Okay.
Hugh Jackman's
living up to the name.
Yeah, actually,
that's great.
Hugh Jackman is reported to be in it. Robert De Niro, Shailene Woodley, Penelope Cruz, and Patrick Dempsey.
Wow,
so it's a pretty big cast with very little.
Driver's playing Ferrari, and he recently played Gucci.
Yeah, House of Gucci was a great movie.
I haven't seen it.
It was a great movie.
I haven't seen it either.
It was a great. My wife has a Adam Driver.
Have you seen him in Logan Lucky?
Logan Lucky's. Have you seen?
See, I have not seen that.
Logan Lucky
people,
is
I know people
great.
love that.
It's real good.
The cool thing about that is it's attached to the Ocean's 11 universe. Fantastic movie. I highly recommend it.
Yeah,
it takes
great. Daniel Craig,
it's
Adam
a heist
Driver.
that takes place during a NASCAR race.
That's what I thought.
It's amazing. Daniel Craig's incredible.
Yeah.
And Adam Driver he's a fantastic actor.
And then I got an interesting fact.
What you got?
That's about this movie. So they were talking about the perfect lap. And the perfect lap, he said, is going to be about 3.5 minutes.
Yep.
And I was curious, how much faster now is the perfect lap? How much has technology and competition driven that perfect lap? Do you have any guesses what a perfect lap at Le Mans is right now?
So before you said it was 3.5.
That's what he was saying in the movie, 3.5.
3:30 flat.
And he set a record twice in that race, according to the movie. I don't know if that's true.
Okay. I'm gonna say it's dropped at least 20 seconds.
3 minutes, 17.297 seconds.
Okay.
And you're driving for 24 hours, doing a lap every 3.5 minutes. You're doing almost 500 laps, just shy of 500 laps.
It's crazy.
It's
awesome.
Insane.
It's the real Daytona 500.
It is.
Yeah. I learned
day and night Tona 500.
I learned today that the Daytona 500 was 500 miles, not 500 laps.
Right.
So
and Daytona has their own version, which they talk about. It's it's now called the Rolex 24. But yeah, no, it's fascinating. Let's talk about the movie. What's some things that stuck out to you in this movie that connected to you, whether it's racing or life, or what are some things that stuck out that you're like, wow, that's good, like, or that's bad, or like that doesn't represent at all, like. Let's
have our guest go first.
Okay. There were really two scenes that really stuck out to me in the movie. It's actually the opening scene I think is awesome with Carroll Shelby, Matt Damon's character. And it's when he himself is actually going on to win Le Mans. And I can't remember the whole narration when he's talking about basically the
something
feeling.
about 7,000 RPM.
Yes. And that feeling.
I have it up if we want to read it.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay. Because they end the movie with the same narration. Yep. It's modified a little bit, but
very similar.
There's a point at 7,000 RPM where everything fades. The machine becomes weightless, just disappears. And all that's left is a body moving through space and time. 7,000 RPM, that's where you meet it. You feel it coming. It creeps up on you, close in your ear, asks you a question, the only question that matters. Who are you?
And I think that line is perfect for just explaining the feelings you get when you're racing.
Yeah.
I think one of the coolest things about racing, and I think this was something that, to a certain extent, maybe it's just from my background, that this film kind of got into the commitment level that it takes to be a race car driver. You know, I think there's so many things in life, you know, whether it's us doing this podcast right now where you could pull out your phone, you could be distracted. You know, you're never really living in the moment for the most part. It's hard to get there, especially nowadays.
That's fair.
In a race car, you can't be there. You can't be that way. In a race car, you have to be totally in the moment. Your bills don't matter. What happened last Tuesday doesn't matter. Where you're at with your relationship with your husband, your wife, your girlfriend, your boyfriend, those things don't matter. The only thing that matters is focusing on what you're doing, because the line there between success and failure
or death
it's drawn in the sand, where, you know, a lot of sports you really, in a lot of things in life, we don't have that as people anymore, where racing still kind of provides that, where you're living on the edge and living basically on a fine line between being fully alive or dead.
Yeah.
And I thought that line like perfectly demonstrated the way it feels to actually be in a race car.
And when that first started too, like I was like, I didn't think much of it. I was like, okay, it's cool. And then he pops the pills, speeds off through the highway and stuff, and cuts me. I was like, okay. Then I was immediately into the next moment of the movie. But when they started mentioning about talking about keep it at 7, and that theme started to come up, I'm like, oh, okay. I'm starting to get the bigger picture here. And then it comes up again at the last race at the Le Mans, and then the quote is again adjusted a little bit, but they finished the movie with some sort of statement like that. I thought it was a powerful way to bookend like what the meat of the movie was about with that quote. Yeah. And I didn't even have the perspective you did about being in a car and being in like that takes it to a whole other depth. Yeah.
Later, Miles is talking about how when you get up to those speeds, he's talking to his son and he points at a marker on the track. And he's like, right now, I know right here is when I have to start braking to make the turn. And his son says, yeah, but you're going, 200 miles an hour. How could you possibly see that? He says, well, when you're at those speeds, you notice everything. You don't get tunnel vision. In fact, it opens up. And what he's talking about there, but not saying, is like when adrenaline enters your system, because you're at this high risk situation, your sight becomes sharper, your comprehension's sharper, your response time's sharper, your smell, like everything increases. And as you were saying, Broc, with all those other things drop away, we can get that same kind of singular focus without those things, but the level of risk there forces it way faster.
Absolutely.
And honestly, Jeff, when you were saying that keep it under 7 throughout the movie, the question there comes down to like risk management and protect the corporate image or protect your own legacy. And I caught that from the movie, from watching Leo Beebe. I never connected it to the bookended speeches, which are like obviously about that. Yeah. I somehow missed that entirely. Yeah, huge observation there. As far as I'm concerned, I totally missed it.
Yeah, so kind of put us inside the cockpit for a little bit, like Broc. Like, do you remember your first time behind?
Yeah.
Like what was it like? Like,
yeah. So I raced from a pretty young age. So I actually started racing what they call quarter midgets, which kind of looks like a sprint car, back when I was, I think, 7. So
incredible.
And it's a little go kart, but I did that for a few years, but I never really got into a full blown sprint car until I think I was going into my senior year. So it would have been my summer of my junior year into my senior year. And I do remember the first time I got in a sprint car, and I mean, I almost had a panic attack. I'd been around sprint cars. My entire life. It was hot. Fire suit was incredibly uncomfortable and hot.
Helmets can't be comfortable either.
They're not.
Yeah, I was gonna.
Yeah, like
I get why you wear them, but like those things can't be aesthetically pleasing.
Helmets are for nerds.
Real men don't need those. It's kind of crazy because when my wife and I were watching the film yesterday, racing obviously still has that element of danger, but it's changed quite a bit because of safety improvements. And we were talking, and one of the things I said was basically those guys back then were absolutely out of their mind.
Yeah,
racing and sprint car racing. Honestly, they should do a film about sprint car racing from the 60s and 70s.
I would watch that.
Yeah, they raced with no roll cage.
Yeah,
guys got tossed from cars all the time, and while we kind of have that adrenaline rush and living on life's edge to a certain extent back then, I mean those cars were truly widow makers.
Well, also back then they were flying airplanes through barns, right?
Yeah,
They were lunatics. That's one of the great reasons that we invented television, is so that people would stay inside and not go out and kill themselves.
Absolutely, it's very, very true.
Within that quote that we just talked about, there's something that like at the end of so spoiler alert for anyone who has not watched this movie yet. First of all, turn this episode off and go watch it. At the end, when Ford, well, I feel like Ford
links below where you can see it if you haven't already.
I feel like Ford was kind of conflicted because Ford obviously had that moment in the car with Shelby when he broke down. He tries like, I wish my dad was here for this moment, which this will probably come up a little bit later in the episode. But so I feel like Ford genuinely wanted to put the best foot forward when it came to the people that was a part of his team. But he was also running a business that had been part of a war.
Yeah.
That supplied so he had this big picture, little picture type of stretch of I would love to keep it a family company, I think, but I'm supplying planes for a world war or whatever.
He's trying to live up to his father and his grandfather's name as a titan of industry,
right.
In a time that. So this is something that kind of pissed me off. Lee, in the last 3 years, you and your marketing team have presided over the worst sales slump in U.S. history. Well, if we look at the historic record, the last 3 years before that was a recession, right? So it's so he's trying to be a titan of industry in a time where more and more automobile manufacturers are out. Yeah. People are tightening their budgets for whatever reason. Yeah. But also you've got this baby boomer generation coming up, which is about to hit adult consumer age, as they said, and first generation of 17-year-olds with money in their pocket. Henry Ford Jr. is in this weird spot where he wants to create his own legacy, going back to Braveheart episode. He wants to create his own legacy, but also he's starting out ahead. Yeah. And so that's like a sword of Damocles over his head is can I make a name for myself? Or am I just riding on the coattails of titans before me?
And so at the end of the movie, when Ford is he's got the internal debate and Leo BB, and he's trying to manipulate let's get all three Fords to cross the line at the same time. Ford hesitates a little bit. He's and we actually don't see him respond. Mm-hmm. We just see BB heading towards Shelby, and there's that moment, and I thought of this idea there's this image versus reality concept that some people don't really deal with a lot, but when you talk about big businesses, when you talk about people trying to push a product versus push a success or push a accomplishment, there is more weight for them in going, let's get a good picture versus a genuine win.
Yeah.
I was so furious in this moment. and but in the same time, when Christian Bale was in the car and you see him, he was all happy. He's HAPPY, and then he starts to back off a little bit.
H with an H at the beginning,
right?
HAPPY.
And you know what he's working on. You're okay, because Miles is a great dude. Mm-hmm. Just through this movie, you see him just be consistently Ken Miles. His arc is just consistency. He's the same character from the beginning to the end. He sticks true to what he believes in, and he stands his ground. And you see him just he molds a little bit. At the end, he goes it's more important to be a part of a team. And it's beautiful, but in that same time, it's you see that fight between image and reality. And he
has his cake and eats it too, though.
Yeah, he does.
He lays down the best lap ever.
Well, he breaks how many records in one 24-hour race?
Yeah.
So he already had victories, but then I was so frustrated in that moment that they would rather have a picture than have someone just smoke the rest of the competition authentically.
Yeah,
that bothered me.
I got a couple notes on Leo Beebe, but Brock, I feel like you have something to say there.
One, I truly agree 100% with Jeff. That drove me absolutely nuts at the end of the film. Obviously that's the end of the actual story.
Yeah.
Too. And
no, he kills himself.
Well, yeah,
he gets himself killed.
He does, yes. But
he dies doing what he loves.
Yes. Yeah.
Going too fast.
Yeah. Terrible way to be honest.
in a prototype.
Yes. But I agree 100% with you. That drove me nuts. And I think a large part of this film was kind of interesting because I think that was one of the things that did really well, I guess, comparing the film to actual racing is kind of this balance between the corporate world and at the same time the Enzo Ferrari that is meticulous and builds the fastest racing machine possible. And I thought it was kind of interesting because I felt Ken Miles, like what you said, Jeff, he actually sort of transformed a little bit there at the very end. He compromised compared to the way I felt like he truly acted throughout the film to make the Ford Motor Company happy with that great picture coming across the finish line. At the same time, I also felt the Ford Motor Company throughout the film actually compromised a little bit. They were this huge production, just pumping out vehicles off a production line constantly. Yeah. But at the end of the day, they finally came to the realization just because you're this huge car manufacturer doesn't mean you actually know how to build the best race car possible. It's like building a burger. You can go to McDonald's and you can just get a burger. Hopefully McDonald's doesn't sue me for saying that. I don't know ill will there.
If anything, you might get sued because they're not technically a burger.
That is true. That is true. Or you could go to the mom and pop place that dedicates and puts a ton of time into the product that they develop. So I felt like a lot of the film was that balancing between the corporate interest, the money that's needed to be competitive, and then at the same time really dedicating and putting all your eggs in one basket and building the best race car you possibly could, which can't be done under that corporate interest too as well.
Yeah. The ironic thing is like Henry Ford Sr., the first Ford, the whole purpose of his company was, I'm going to make a non-impressive vehicle that's very affordable. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to make as many of them as I can.
American way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to make a very... it's going to be accessible. It's going to be no frills. And even my own employees will be able to afford one.
Yeah.
And it's funny how 2 generations later, because he needs to make a name for himself, Henry Ford Jr. and the ego getting attacked by Enzo Ferrari is enough to push him to take on pretty large levels of risk.
Mm-hmm.
But just like we saw with Leo Beebe, because he's a big corporate interest and he's got this huge brand to protect, Henry Ford Jr. takes these precautions that end up actually costing him losing the first race.
Yeah.
Now, we don't know from the movie how much of that was Leo Beebe's interest and how much of that was Henry Ford's choice. The movie seems to imply that it's mostly Leo Beebe's interference.
It puts a lot of the villainous ideals on Beebe versus Ford.
Yeah.
Which I'd rather it be that way.
I got,
whether it's true or not, I'd rather dislike Beebe than Ford for some reason. I don't know.
I got kind of 2 things because of Leo Beebe out of this movie. One, bad managers take credit for other people's success and defer blame. And then a good manager defers credit to his team and takes on blame for his team. And we see with Leo Beebe, like, that's not what he does at all. He's very much a bad manager in that regard.
And you see the opposite with Shelby.
Yes.
Yeah. Like, he's like, do this. It's my call. I'll take care of it. I am going to the man. Like you see him.
I will take the heat. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And then the other one is risk management. So in Braveheart, we saw a lot of William Wallace is not willing to antagonize the British soldiers until they push him too far. And then we see him trying to speak with Robert the Bruce about how Robert the Bruce says, the lords have castles and they've got land that are at risk. And in Ford v Ferrari, we see the same kind of risk management thing. Carroll Shelby has a bit of a name to protect. Ken Miles has nothing to lose.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And with that nothing to lose-ness, we see him willing to take much bigger risks. Leo Beebe, he personally doesn't have a whole lot to lose, except for his position as Henry Ford Jr.'s right-hand man at one of the largest automobile factories in the world. But he's on a name of his own, right? Like Shelby's a name of his own. Mm-hmm. The Shelby Motor Company, there's something to protect there. And it's just really interesting how when you're trying to create a name versus create a brand versus protect a brand, what you're willing to do. I asked ChatGPT, my faithful research assistant, how much of this movie was accurate, and basically, it's pretty there's artistic liberties taken, but it's all with things that we don't know about anyway. Mm-hmm. And basically, Leo Beebe was there was a lot of friction between him and Shelby. The degree to that we don't know. What we do know is Leo Beebe's first and foremost priority was to protect the Ford brand, and given his position and given who he is, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
The incentives are lined up just right. That makes sense that would be his first and only goal.
Yeah.
Protect the brand. Don't make us look bad. Slow down so we can get all 3 across the finish line. It's possible that Leo Beebe was trying to pull something clever. We also know that minutia of the rule was something that the Ford team probably was somewhat privy to. because it wasn't like this wasn't the first time something like that had come up. So it's all that to say, we don't know how villainous he actually is, the actual story, but all of his incentives make sense. Mm-hmm. And most people in those situations would do those same things.
Yeah. No, go ahead.
I was looking up. This is actually the first time I've done this on our podcast. Nelson, you'd be proud of me. I was looking up the script because within IMDb, the quote I was looking for was not in there. BB and Shelby are having a conversation about Ken. This is earlier on in the movie about why Shelby wants Ken and why BB doesn't. And it's that line, and it's a long time ago. Lee here asked me, what's the one thing money can't buy? And the real answer is a pure racer behind the wheel. That's Ken Miles. Mm-hmm. BB goes, be that as it may, we think he may be too pure. Mm-hmm. Too pure? Now explain what that means.
I'm putting in a quack even though you
that's fine. It means he's all about himself. And then it just goes on from there, just the idea of like how even too pure is bad.
Yeah.
That from the very beginning, they didn't want to give Miles a chance.
Absolutely.
Like, he was a beatnik, as they said.
Yeah.
I for storytelling purposes, it's great. Like it's a great story arc. Like it's an interesting situation, but like as just a human to human relationship, when you tell me, oh, you're too good at this, mm-hmm. we need someone to win. But
no, it's not that he's too good.
It's not corporate.
He's not corporate enough. That's right.
Right, but when they're using the word pure though,
yeah,
pure means without fault. So I'm still going to use that good phrasing. Mm-hmm. Like you're too good, too pure, too unfaulted. We need someone with a little more fault. Like just like that blows my mind. Like I couldn't get past that. And from the very beginning, we see that BB just has different interests than just genuine wins.
Oh, absolutely.
Whether it's product or victories, his interests are different than just those genuineness, authentic accomplishments.
And I think that really, my thing, one of the reasons I love the movie so much is I think that ties back so much to like racing in real life. And especially Jeff could attest to this watching NASCAR. NASCAR has gone through so many changes over the years. Yeah. And some of the things that my dad, as a diehard NASCAR fan, loves and nowadays maybe doesn't like NASCAR so much is the personalities that used to come along in racing. Yeah. And that's exactly the way Ken Miles was. They want someone that's blue collar, someone they can relate to, kind of tells it like it is, hard-nosed guy, but at the same time a good guy they could go have a beer with somewhere. Meanwhile, the corporate interests, so Ford in this case, the current NASCAR owners, they want a guy that can, honestly go out there and pimp Walmart to the best of their ability and not
damage the brand.
Yes, not image the brand.
If I can throw out an example, and correct me if I'm wrong, Broc, the GoDaddy driver that was
Danica Patrick.
And I'm not saying I'm not critiquing her driving abilities, but like when she was in, and she still drives every now and then, like all I saw was a billboard ad.
Marketing. That was everything.
I'm not against female drivers. I think that's cool. Like it's not about the gender thing, but just when she came in.
Was she competing with men?
Yeah.
Does NASCAR do mixed? Yeah. Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. But with her specifically, she was just marketing.
Yeah.
And I had a hard time taking her seriously, whether she was serious or not.
Yeah.
And she proved she knew what she could do around the track. Like she was not bad by any means, but I couldn't take her seriously.
Yeah. And just from my standpoint, I agree with you 100%. Danica was still a good race car driver. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't say she was good enough to be at the level that she was. And I think if you look at her results, it proves that. Yeah. She never won in NASCAR. She won one IndyCar race that was a fuel mileage race, which people that know about racing, that comes down to pit stop strategy. And basically she had enough fuel to go further.
Right.
And I think that relates right back to the movie. They wanted, Ken Miles was a little too hard nosed. Was going to throw a wrench at Carroll Shelby in the start of the movie. That's the type of race car driver they were getting, even though he was very accomplished. Tying that back to the Ford Motor Company that's building sedans for the working class man.
Yeah.
They thought that wasn't going to fit their image.
And they're
correctly.
right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they were right.
Yeah.
I recently, like over the last year or so, got somewhat into UFC. And UFC kind of has the same thing where the fighters with the best marketing really tend to do better because. And I was listening to a fighter talk about it. He's like, listen, you can be a really competent fighter, but if people aren't interested in you, you're not going to get fights.
Yeah.
And so he had taken on this very MAGA personality that was an exaggerated version of his actual views because he knew it would get people fired up. It's going to offend some people. It's going to make loyalists of other people. And he started getting more fights because of it. And we've talked about this before, heel and face, right? So the face is a good guy, the heel is a bad guy. That's where we get the term heel turn, is when they go from face to heel. Hulk Hogan's probably one of the most notable ones, and then he went back to face. Heels do really, really well when it's a matter of branding. Donald Trump has a lot of faults, but man, does he play a heel well, and it makes for great television, and it engages audiences. And Ken Miles is one of those same situations. Now, is this a matter of it wasn't right for the era, and now we like that what we perceive as authenticity, and so we've shifted? Maybe, or maybe it's just that Ford Motor Company hadn't tapped into that desire for quote unquote authenticity. But yeah, it was really interesting how more than anything, they want to protect their corporate image. But if that's your goal, then you're not racing Le Mans.
Yeah.
Right? If your goal is to be conservative and safe and protect your corporate image, Le Mans is not the place for you.
Yeah.
Because this is a place for huge risk.
Yep. Yeah, and I think that's very true. And I think, that's something you even see in racing today, like going back to Trump and the showman that he is and the popularity that drives. That, NASCAR, for instance, and I'm sorry I keep referencing NASCAR, but it's probably a lot of people can associate more with NASCAR than a lot of forms of racing. But back in the late 90s, like when Jeff, I'm sure you were watching it quite a bit, and I know I was, late 90s, early 2000s, NASCAR was huge. It was one of the fastest growing sports in America. It might have been the fastest growing sport.
Primetime television, too, like it was getting the ratings.
Yeah,
it was
you're talking 100,000 people at races, and a lot of the guys that were racing back then, they were just hard-nosed race car drivers. Yeah. The guys that grew up busting their knuckles at local racetracks and getting to that place where the guy that was working at the local factory loved that guy because he was going to get out of the car. He was going to celebrate by, down in a Budweiser. Yep. And if he got crashed, he was going to go down there and give someone a black eye. Right. And people love that.
And smoking a cigarette in between all that. Yeah.
And what happened was as NASCAR got popular, companies started seeing the marketability that NASCAR had with their fan base, and the more and more corporate interests started getting involved with racing, the more and more those teams started shifting towards a more clean-cut
image.
Yeah. And it's ran off those diehard NASCAR fans too as well.
We saw that with social media.
Yeah.
Right? Social media used to be a bastion for free speech. Then because there's so many people there, because the speech is free, people are like, this is great, it's refreshing. Then the corporate interests show up, and then the social media websites are like, well, we need to censor all this stuff because we want to be safe for the advertisers. And then all the users are like, well, this sucks now. This is boring now.
Yeah. You go back even further. It's comparable to like when Facebook was just for college students. That's even before our age was eligible.
Yeah,
for
I was
Facebook.
on it the first year after it was opened up.
And then then when parents started to be allowed to, I was like, well, now my mom's on here, so I don't want Facebook anymore. It's that same thing. It's like, now my sponsor actually is doing more for the race rather than just funding it. Like, yeah,
it's really interesting. How do you toe that line where you're or honestly, really, it's more of a matter of corporate advertisers need to be less safe.
Yes,
they need to be willing to have riskier.
Yeah,
I mean, I guess there's some that do that, like Red Bull, Monster, but those are like extreme sports guys. So it kind of comes with the territory, I guess.
Yeah, you don't see like the Walmarts of the world. I don't know, maybe this isn't appropriate, but the Target groups of the world, even though they've kind of gone down a different path here recently that's been a little bit problematic maybe. They're a little less, I think, they're a little more cautious in dipping their toe into, those types of activities or the funding, sports or things like that where they know that it's going to stir up a certain group of people that absolutely love it and another group of people that absolutely hate it.
Yeah.
Man, I want to go to a race now. This is fun.
It's fantastic. Racing's great.
It is. It's a good time.
Yeah.
It's a good time. I've been to just some fun facts. I went to Michigan for many years. The Michigan race in NASCAR used to always fall on, it was always the first week of school.
Yep.
For when schools were, but it was also, my birthday was also that either the day before or day after of the Michigan race for NASCAR. And so my dad, a bunch of us guys would always go up to the race. We'd hit the Busch race. We'd hit the pit passes. They used to do a concert series. We'd hit the concert, like just the whole experience. And then that next morning I'd be at school.
Yeah.
Like it was that was like 6 or 7 years. The year I started going to the NASCAR race was the year Earnhardt passed away.
Mm-hmm.
That was my first year going to the race. So he passed away due to an accident for the first race of the season. Michigan's closer to the later end of the series. So that was my first year going, and I went for like 7 year 8 stretch after that. But it's a good time. Even if you can't watch it on TV, give it a chance live. You absolutely have to see it in person. It's a different thing.
Yeah.
It's fun.
Yeah, actually, like one form of racing that I'm not crazy about. I have some friends that are really into it is NHRA drag racing. I won't really watch it on TV, but if you ever get a chance to go to a drag race, NHRA drag race, it is incredible. 10,000 horse. I mean, it's if you've been to the biggest,
They got a bunch of horses dressed like women.
yes.
I'm not following.
It's quite the sight to see those 10,000 horses.
My next door neighbor was a drag racer. Daryl. I can't remember his last name. It's been a minute, but yeah, every summer he'd get
Daryl's half the people.
Yeah.
Just Google Daryl, you'll find him. Actually, there's a lot of Daryls in racing too.
Yeah.
There's Daryls that have siblings named Daryl.
But that was a great part of the summers. He would get it out, and then you'd see him leave on a Wednesday and come back on a Monday morning or something.
Yeah,
So it's cool.
It's a very cool time.
Crickets.
I don't have a whole lot from this movie. This movie doesn't make a lot of claims about what's true. One thing that I thought was really interesting is when Ken Miles, his garage is impounded by the IRS, which are thieves, but we'll come back to that. He's ready right there to give up on his dreams to provide for his family. And then later, when Shelby comes around, he hasn't committed to anything. Mm. He's just got into the car to test it per Shelby's request and give some feedback. And his wife, who was hesitant to let him give up on his dream, is now upset that he's going back towards his dream. She's like, I thought we gave this up. I mean, I thought that was really interesting. On the one hand, how she supported him early on, and really throughout the movie, there was a moment of frustration and confusion, which is fair. She supported him. He was pursuing his dreams, and he was quickly willing to give up his dreams. I think right in there is a really great image for married couples of what marriage should look like, right? A man needs to be willing to sacrifice his dreams to support his family, and at the same time, a wife needs to support her husband in his dreams, and vice versa, right? Husbands need to support their wives in their dreams. Yeah. Wives need to be willing to sacrifice their dreams to support their families. It goes both ways. Yeah. And then sometimes just the opportunity to pursue your dreams lands in your lap, and you go for it. And you got to be supportive with your spouse when they go for it.
They really, and again, I don't know anything about either of these characters outside of this movie, so I'm just basing my opinion off what I viewed in this movie. But like, they depicted his Ken's family as just a relatable family. Mm-hmm. Like it was not one of those families like, okay, I can't put myself in any of their shoes. Like, just a hardworking wife that's just, just a wife that also like stands up for herself. Like that scene where she's driving the car, I was losing it. Like there's so many memorable scenes in this movie where I'm just like, I'm either like was taken back by, or I was laughing really like deeply. Like, but yeah, that just like, I think she's the reason Ken was as good as a man as he was.
I would agree.
Again, 100%. Based on the movie. Assuming that they stayed true to how she really was, like that's what a man with a supportive wife and just an authentic, honest relationship. That's the power of that. Like, and I think that's depicted really well in this movie.
Yeah. And vice versa. Right? His willingness to sacrifice and give up his dreams to support her and the family, I think goes a long way to that trust that she has. Yeah. That even though because the conversation right before that is that. I thought a couple of years ago we had a nest egg. He's like, yes. She's like, but that was a couple of years ago. Yes. And even through that, she's trusting him because she knows he's the kind of guy that's going to give up.
Right.
Broc, you were going to say something?
Yeah, and I agree 100% with Jeff and really both of your guys' take on that. What I really kind of gained from his relationship with his wife throughout it was one, like you said, was just her unbelievable support of Ken as a person to push him ahead. And also, I feel like throughout the film, it depicted Ken as obviously kind of a hothead, maybe fly by the seat of his pants kind of guy, where she had a tendency to be that way as well, but she also had a tendency to like ground him. And I think the thing, Jeff, you might be able to relate to this to a certain extent, but I know like how my wife, she does that so much for me. Honestly, I feel like so many things I've been involved with, whether it was my job or even racing, I actually got better once my wife and I started seeing one another, because it was one of those things where she kind of grounded me as a person, where I honestly probably share at times some of those commonalities with Ken, with anger issues and being irritated with circumstances. And she always put things into perspective. And I really felt like his wife, which I don't even know what her character's name was, to be honest with you. I don't know if it was even mentioned that many times.
I want to say Molly.
Molly Miles.
Nice. Man, that's impressive.
Yeah.
That's impressive you picked that up.
Looked it up.
I drove away from the gas station without filling up, but I can remember the secondary character in a movie I watched this morning.
That's very impressive.
It's dedication.
Yes, absolutely. But yeah, I mean, I thought she was a great character, and I in the movie I loved the relationship he had with his son too as well. I think in racing, I know it's that way with my dad, including my mom. My mom's been heavily involved with racing, but the bond my dad and I have had, over the years of racing, being out in the shop, working on those things, I mean, it's second to none in a lot of different sports. And racing a lot of times is a family affair. I'd be actually kind of interested to see what Ken's son did.
Yeah. I have that. Hold on. Keep talking. I can bring that back up. I don't have that directly in front of me right now. But
I'd be interested to see, obviously with the circumstances at the end of the film, with him getting killed in the crash there at Riverside.
He became a banker.
He became a banker. Now that would have been a hard turn. We thought the end of the movie was dramatic. That would have been really dramatic. But it would have been interesting to see if he would have, actually got into racing following a situation like that.
All right. Peter Miles, this is according to IMDb. Peter Miles, son of Ken, worked as an executive administrator of a vintage car collection belonging to billionaire William E. Chip Connor II, valued at over $80 million. The collection includes a Ferrari 250 GTO, which Shelby built the Cobra Daytona Coupe to battle against in the GT class. It's according to IMDb. So,
wow.
That was William Chip Connor II?
William E. Chip. William, and Chip is like in quotations
his
the nickname. Yeah, Connor II.
Japanese-born, Hong Kong-based American businessman and car collector. What did you do, Chip? I don't know. Billionaires fascinate me. On the political left, you'll hear things like, no one becomes a billionaire without exploitation of the working man. Now, I strongly disagree with them. Right? They provide a product that people want, and so they purchase it, and that enriches the person. Yeah. If he wasn't providing a product that people wanted, nobody's going to buy it. He doesn't become a billionaire. And then they say, yes, but the people building it are making less money than him and less than they're earning money that's less than they're contributing in value, but the trade-off there is that they have the stability of not having to generate their own work by owning a small business. However, the left is right about something. They're right that very few, if any, billionaires in modern history become billionaires without some form of exploitation, but the exploitation comes in the form of government handouts, right? Like Elon Musk, for all of his successes, also has a lot of faults in which he is, like, for example, a lot of cities that are adopting EV technology, it's Tesla power stations. That are government contracted with them. Bezos through Amazon, government contracts is more than half of Amazon's business. So I agree that billionaires become billionaires through exploitation, but it's the exploitation of tax money through the government. William E. Connor II specifically took over the family business in Tokyo and moved the company's headquarters to Hong Kong. What was the family business? No idea.
And that's the way they want it.
Hold on, I'm just going to read from the Wikipedia. I'll edit this down. Born in 1949, his father, William E. Connor, started the eponymous William E. Connor and Associates in Japan. I've never heard of it.
Definitely funneling drug
I-
money launderers.
I could support that.
It's got to be something just absolutely ridiculous.
Merchandise sourcing service with over 72 years of experience, serving more than 60 U.S., UK, North and South American, European, and Asian countries. Import-export.
do you know what that-
probably
you know-
drugs. Yeah, probably drugs.
I'm trying to think of there's a film or a show where someone was trying. I don't know. They're lying about their occupation and they just say imports and exports.
Yeah.
What is that? Do you like? And then people are like, "Can you expound on that?" Nah, just
It's the
import.
best. It's the best cover-up.
Yeah.
I'm in imports and exports. Of what? Stuff?
Stuff, just things,
Goods.
Things?
Yeah, exports.
The best fake career ever, though, has got to be from Seinfeld, where he lies about being an architect.
Yeah,
Art Vandelay.
yeah. I will say I'm a big Always Sunny fan.
Oh, yeah.
And it's maybe not quite occupation, but Charlie,
Yeah.
the philanthropist, but it's a
I'm
full-on
full-on
rapist.
I'm a full-on rapist? What? A philanthropist.
I need to watch this show.
It's amazing. It's amazing.
So, I've never been a car guy.
Mm-hmm.
I've always appreciated cars. And growing up, like it's been one of those things. Like always, I've never learned to drive stick. Granted, it's less relevant now than it was back when we were younger. But like, I still would like to if there's a chance. But like, this car made me want to be a car guy. Like just watching like, just the how do I describe it? Just the feeling of just getting your hands dirty. Like I don't do that much. I'm not mechanical or like I just like this car. I was like I want to go tinker in the garage now.
Yeah.
Like, and I just want to hit something with a wrench.
Or a hammer.
And it was specifically it was multiple things, but it was when the beginning of the movie and at the end of the movie when Shelby gets in the car, he pops some pills, starts the engine, and you just see him, as soon as the engine revs up, he goes to this place of like
Zen.
solitude. And I'm just like it was just a beautiful depiction. It's like, so just throughout the movie, there's just moments of like, I want to learn more about cars.
Yeah.
And that's not like me. So I found that out today. This movie motivates me to
That's what
read
happened.
articles about cars.
That's what happened for me with Into the Wild.
You wanted to get a bus.
And backpacking.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Like I saw that movie and I was like, I want to hike the Appalachian Trail.
Yeah.
Did you watch the end of the movie? Did you see how that ended?
Several times. And you know what? I only ever doubled down. So.
And he's definitely a fan of getting all rid of currencies. Like so there's many things in that movie.
Yeah. With
or giving currency and not using what you purchased, like sorry, Nels, I'll quit. But yeah, that was just one of the things like I took away from it.
We haven't explained the context of that, and I want to now.
All out.
I hinted at it.
All out. Nelson, you have the floor.
Yeah, as mentioned in last episode, I'm on new medication. It comes with some side effects that make me a little loopy and a bit of a space cadet. Specifically, I went to a gas station. I went in and I got an energy drink, a bottle of water, and $20 on 10. And I got in my car and drove away. And I got outside of town and realized, wow, gas must be expensive. I'm still on empty. And drove another mile or so before I was like, oh, that's right. I never filled up. So I returned to the gas station. The whole time I'm driving back to the gas station, I'm like, how the heck am I going to explain this? But the way that we have our bank set up, like I can't spend money without Jen's permission. And that works really well for us. But I was like, this is going to be a whole headache. And I get in there and there's somebody's parked at the pump that I was at. I go in the car, in the gas station. There's a lady at the cash register. The cashier looks frustrated. The manager's there. They're trying to figure it out. And I kind of stand there a little bit behind, listen for a little bit. Like, oh, they've got, I think I know what the problem is. So like, yeah, I can shed some light on the situation, I think. And they look at me like, what? Who the heck are you? I was like, well, I was just in here. I put $20 on pump 10 and then drove away. And they're like, oh, that explains everything. So she had pulled in, put in like $15.56 specifically, because that's what her budget allowed for. Walked inside to pay it in cash, And they're like, "Oh no, you've already paid." And she's like, "What?" And she's like, "Yeah, we'll credit the balance back to your card." She's like, "Well, what card?" And they read her the last 4 digits of the card. She's like, "That's not my card." So by the time I showed up, they'd already credited the money back to me, the difference back to me. And so what they did is instead they took her $15.56 and they put it on my new pump that I was at, and I filled up. And then the next day, the very next day, I nearly did it again.
Man,
I went in, bought myself an energy drink, bought myself some water, put some money on the tank. This was 2 days later, I guess. And I got out of the car, and I put it in drive, and I was like, hold on. So this time I didn't make it out of the parking lot. But yeah, it's, I've just, yeah.
you almost paid it forward.
I loved, yeah.
You almost paid it
did
forward.
a good deed.
My dad used to tell me that if he gave me $2, I would give one to somebody who has less money than me, and then lose the second one.
That I love that.
Oh man, that is good.
So, either whether this movie or this movie adjacent, specifically for someone who drives racing cars, is there, because there's a lot of racing movies out there. Some terrible,
Most of them.
Some of them pretty iconic.
Yeah.
Like there's Days of Thunder.
Yep.
There's the movie Driver,
Yeah,
which is an open wheel movie.
That was with Stallone, right?
Correct.
Absolutely god awful. Terrible.
Could you give us your like top 5 or whatever racing movies?
I could.
From the
Chitty
perspective,
Chitty Bang Bang. Of course.
Herbie Fully Loaded.
Yeah. The Lindsay Lohan one.
Right.
Yeah. I probably could. Number 5 is a just ridiculous movie. I love some like ridiculously stupid, funny old movies. And number 5, I would probably do Stroker Ace, which is with Burt Reynolds.
Okay.
And it is one of the dumbest.
Is
He has a chicken suit. Have you ever?
I've seen Burt Reynolds in a chicken suit, never knew the context.
I'm
But that's probably
looking
it.
it up right now.
I doubt he's been in a chicken suit twice.
I mean, there is no doubt in my mind it's going to be any sort of rating.
This looks
It's going to be
awesome.
terrible.
All of these,
I love it.
All of these that you're about to recommend are going to be linked below of where you can watch them.
This is
people.
amazing.
Okay.
What was that again?
Stroker Ace.
Stroker Ace. Okay.
Yep. So that I would say-
1983.
yeah.
All right, what's the next one?
Can we include documentaries?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm actually probably more of a big documentary guy than I
Okay.
actually am.
You look like a documentary.
Yeah,
we-
I do. I do. You're not wrong. It's
can't
definitely
say that, Nelson.
It's definitely the collar and the glasses. The collar and the glasses. Absolutely.
I was a friend of mine was interviewed on a podcast recently, and the guy says to him, "You look like somebody that drinks Bud Light and shops at Target."
That could be the biggest compliment or the biggest insult, depending on what
Depending on
podcast
who's
you're-
saying it.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. All right.
Actually, that was Jacob Winograd. He was on
Oh,
Schindler's List.
Right
yeah.
on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Man, that's a rough one to get through there,
Yeah.
Schindler's List.
Yeah.
Definitely not in my top 5 motorsports movies.
Although there's a BMW in it.
That is true. That is true.
So I guess it would be a Volkswagen, not a BMW.
Number 4, and it's probably not that great of a racing movie, but it's still great. It's probably, I don't know, I enjoy it. Days of Thunder. I would put it number 4.
Okay.
No, that's Tom Cruise.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
They're,
Nicole Kidman.
Nicole Kidman. There was I'm trying to think of which theme park it was. It may have been Six Flags. We had one in Cleveland. There was a theme park that had one of those theaters where the seats moved,
Uh-huh.
and they had a Days
4D.
of Thunder. Yeah, they had a Days of Thunder experience. So they would show clip. They would tell the movie shortened,
Mm-hmm.
and that was the reason we went to the theme park. My parents love that movie so much that none of us are coaster people. They literally went for like there's a skiing show, like
There's water stains on all their tables.
Yeah. and then my mom's like, we're gonna watch the Days of Thunder live action or like live theater, 4D theater. So I remember that was my first experience with this movie, and it was amazing.
Yeah.
So, real quick, the 2 that you've mentioned so far, are either of these about true stories or are they invented stories?
Invented stories.
Okay.
So far,
Yeah.
invented,
Yeah. So after Days of Thunder, I would probably say, it's kind of funny. This isn't my top 5 because I'm not 100% sure it's actually the name of it. It's either Faster or Fastest, and it's a documentary about MotoGP. you guys would know. The fellow that was Obi-Wan Kenobi in the
Ewan
episodes.
McGregor.
Ewan
Yeah,
McGregor.
'cause
It's
he's
called Faster.
he's-
2003.
Yeah, he's big into. I think he actually rides motorcycles quite a bit. He narrates it.
Is that the one
Ooh.
about the Indian?
No, that I know you're thinking the fastest Indian.
Yeah, and that's about the motorcycle.
Yes.
That's the Indian motorcycle.
Yes.
Has nothing to do with Native Americans.
No. Correct.
Or
Correct.
people from India.
Yes. None whatsoever.
It's neither.
Yes. So, am I right?
Yeah,
That he
it's
was
2003. Ewan
Okay.
McGregor. It's called Faster. Filmed around the world in 2001, 2002. Faster captures the rise of MotoGP superstar Valentino Rossi
Yep.
amid ferocious competition, especially from his bitter rival Max Biaggi.
Yes.
Great
Yeah.
names.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Bike
And that's a
racing's cool.
that's a
It's
documentary.
awesome.
Bike
Yeah.
racing's really
Yeah.
cool.
The opening scene is, to this day, I think it's one of the coolest opening scenes ever I've seen in a movie or a documentary. It's so intense. It's very cool. So that would be number 3. Number 2, I would probably actually do Ford versus Ferrari.
Okay.
Okay.
And number 2,
Familiar. Yeah.
yep. And then number 1, I'm going back to documentary. Senna. It's about Ayrton Senna.
Spell that. Is
It's
it S?
SENNA. And
2010.
absolutely fantastic documentary. I mean, I think it's even gotten great reviews
Michael Schumacher.
from people outside of the racing community.
Yeah.
I think ESPN might have actually been behind some of it and done
Okay.
and helped with it. And
So Rush is not in the top 5.
no,
Okay.
no, I would probably put Rush 6th, and it's ridiculous that I'm putting it behind Stroker Ace. Stroker Ace is like my guilty pleasure.
Okay.
So Stroker Ace should be way
I
back
need to
there.
watch Stroker Race. This
It's
looks
so
great.
dumb. You're going to be so mad that I told you to watch it. I think it's literally Smokey and the Bandit. It tried to take Smokey and the Bandit, take that Southern charm
Yeah.
that Smokey and the Bandit is, and make it into a racing movie. But it probably failed at every aspect of doing that.
Yeah.
But it's just hilarious to me.
I
There's
saw
a
Smokey
scene.
and the Bandit for the first time a couple years ago.
Did you like it?
No.
Really?
What?
Oh man.
It's a good movie. I
Yeah.
enjoy that movie.
Yeah.
My dad really wanted me to watch it with
Yeah.
him. I watched it. I was a dutiful son. It's fine.
Everyone's dad loves that movie. Everyone's dad loves that movie. It's okay. So yeah, you're gonna absolutely hate Stroker Ace.
Okay, good
Yeah,
to know.
yeah,
I'll skip
yeah.
that one.
Yeah.
I'll check out the other 4 though, or
Okay.
the other 3.
Yeah, that sounds good. But
Fastest Indian. What would you put that? Is it in your top 10?
so actually, I have not seen that
Oh, okay.
that movie, but I've heard great things about it.
I watched it when it came out, but I really don't remember anything from it except
Yeah.
for Salt Flats.
Yeah,
that's
yes,
that's all I got.
yeah, and that's the background of the story that I had heard, and I know a lot of people I talk to, whether racing people or inside of racing, outside of racing, love that movie. So
Yeah.
it seems like it's pretty good. I think it was Driven or Driver that you're
Driver.
that I remember watching that in the theaters, and I was so excited because there was a racing movie, and man, it was bad. It was so bad.
It's that movie.
I remember
was,
as like a kid, I even
it was
hated it.
2011. Okay.
No, Driver.
Driver Ryan Gosling. This is not the
Yeah.
one you and I are talking
That's
about.
that's actually pretty cool.
Hold on. Yeah, I've
I
actually
think
not
it's
seen that one.
maybe it's Driven.
Driven.
Yeah.
Is that the documentary with Ewan McGregor?
No, that's
No, what's the
movie
actor?
with
Oh, that's right.
Stallone.
What's
found
the
that
actor in it? Stallone.
yeah,
Stallone.
yeah. Sylvester Stallone's in it.
The Italian Stallion.
Him and
It's,
there's
okay. It's called Driven. 2001. Sylvester Stallone. Yeah.
I feel like there was someone else that was pretty popular too in that, but maybe I'm
Burt
wrong.
Reynolds is in it.
Burt Reynolds. Wow,
Burt Reynolds is in it.
man.
And then I don't recognize the other names. But
Okay.
yeah, the only scene I remember from that movie is the quarter scene, the 3 quarters. He so there's this whole thing like he's such a good driver. They're open wheel cars. He's such a good driver that he can do a lap, throw out 3 quarters. The second lap, pick up all the quarters with his tires.
That's no.
No. I get this.
No.
So in this whole thing, so he goes.
That's not gonna.
Listen,
No.
so he goes to go prove it, and you see this little montage of him quarter,
Uh-huh.
quarter out the open, windowless seat there, and then they show him do a second lap, and they don't show you him picking up all 3 quarters. So and it's
He parks the car,
and
gets
it's
out.
the
picks him up.
Yeah.
the mentor.
Shoves his
It's the
pocket.
mentor figure that they're giving this big image to, and so in this the mentee is like, you can't do this, you can't do this. So then there's this whole scene where, like, they turn the tire and then there's 2 quarters right next to each other on the tire, and the kid goes, "Ha! You didn't get all 3," and he goes off. And then after the mentee is gone, they turn the tire around and the third one's on the tire. That's the only scene I remember from this movie. It's a pretty cool scene. It's definitely fictitious. But like, or is that possible? Actually, is it?
I mean, it might be. I don't know what it would it would prove, to be honest with you, because
he can drive over quarters.
Yeah, it's kind of like
You can drive over quarters in a way that the quarters stick to the car.
Yeah,
for some
You
reason.
just stick them.
yes, yeah. I didn't. Yeah, that was a movie. It did not. I think I remember the crash scenes being so ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like just even beyond fathomable. I thought it was just
Brock, have you ever allegedly done street racing?
no.
Okay.
So, and I'm not saying that for legal purposes. That's truly. I actually,
Can you
it's kind
state your name and age?
yeah,
Just to have clarification.
provide your social security number, credit card too, potentially. I will say this: I've done donuts.
Yeah, I love donuts. Look at me.
Yeah. My wife and I actually, I think it was on our first New Year's Eve. We went to the local fairgrounds. I won't mention what fairgrounds.
Yeah.
Easy enough to figure out. You figure out where we live.
Don't worry, that's all redacted.
yeah. We went there and spun some donuts
That's
and had some fun. So
The reason I ask about street racing, and they got increasingly ridiculous as the series has gone on, but the
Pirates of the Caribbean.
yeah. Do you feel like that's accurate to racing? No, the first Fast and Furious it wasn't in your top 5.
no.
How do you feel about it?
Okay, so the first one I will say is I think it was pretty good. Okay.
Yeah, because they got outlandish.
Yeah. The second one, all I can remember is the ejecto seat or whatever. Do you remember that ridiculous part?
Break someone's neck.
Yeah. Yes. That was absolutely awful. So I think I've seen that, the first one, the second one, and then
I've seen them all.
have you really?
I hate watch them.
Yeah.
I watched them and the whole time I'm like, that's stupid. Nope, couldn't happen. Nope, ridiculous. But I watched the whole thing.
That's kind of the way I am. I think I actually, for some reason, I have no idea why, I actually enjoyed Tokyo Drift.
Yeah, Tokyo Drift was fun.
I think it's kind of fun, kind of cool. The other 9, 7, Fast, whatever.
I think there's 36.
They've just announced
It's so bad.
the one they're working on now will be the final one. But after they announced it's the final one, they then announced it's the first of a trilogy to wrap up the series.
The thing no one asked for. I mean, maybe they did because people show up to them, but
While we're on the topic, Michelle Rodriguez was interviewed. She's in the
Dungeons
Fast and
and Dragons movie.
Right.
She does a great job.
We're not talking about that here now, Nelson.
Can we though?
Maybe.
That's my wheelhouse.
Michelle Rodriguez was interviewed about the movie, and the Fast and Furious series now kind of gets compared to like the Avengers, just because it's gone super sci-fi.
Yeah.
So Michelle was getting asked about the Avengers and just her thoughts on that franchise and stuff, and she goes, they're just doing too much. There's just way too much. Like her whole interview was describing the Fast and the Furious series.
Yeah.
But she didn't get it.
Right.
Like, and I think she's a great actress. There's nothing on her.
She is.
But just the thing she didn't like about the Marvel franchise
It's too
is
absurd.
the reason no one was like.
And the wild thing is, like, the Fast and Furious franchise hypothetically exists in our world.
Right.
yeah.
And the Marvel franchise does not. It
No.
exists in a world where wild things happen.
Yes.
And the Fast and Furious franchise hypothetically exists in our world.
Up until Idris Elba's character. He was actually his character was introduced and he's like bionic now.
Yeah,
It's
he
like,
is.
that was he was like,
he's-
and then they took a car to space. So there's
technically that's a spinoff. That episode,
Idris Elba?
that movie was
that
a
wasn't
spinoff.
Hobbs and Shaw. Idris Elba was in one of the Fast and Furious movies, not Hobbs and Shaw. If I'm not, maybe I'm mistaken about that.
I honestly would not know. I gave up
Either
on
way,
it.
either way, they have definitely crossed the line into sci-fi with these last couple movies, with some of the characters and how they're and then everyone comes back from the dead in this
Idris
movie.
Elba is definitely Hobbs and Shaw.
It's Hobbs and Shaw. Okay,
Okay.
I apologize. Okay, I was thinking
I
that
forgive
was,
you.
Okay, I wasn't asking you. I was
You just
asking
said
Brock.
I apologize.
I was asking for Brock's forgiveness.
Oh, Brock, do you forgive him?
You have it.
All right.
I will give it to you.
Awesome.
Yeah, I will say, going back to like me being more of a snob
Yeah.
when it comes to films, that's a prime example. Transformers, prime example.
Yeah.
I'll be honest, I will probably tick off a huge amount of people. The superhero movies, I'm out. I can't do them anymore.
How do you feel about... So actually, and at least this one does tie into the movie we're supposed to be talking about.
Yeah,
James Bond does not drive a Ford.
Oh yeah.
that is true.
He drives an Aston Martin.
Yep.
how do you feel about the racing scenes or driving scenes typically depicted in James Bond movies? Do you feel like that's relatively accurate? Like, so all my close friends are programmers, and so when, of course, TV and movies do a brutal job of depicting well what hacking is actually.
We just got to
like.
get behind the firewall, and once we're in there, we can.
There's an NCIS episode where two people use the same keyboard to hack something because they'll be faster if there's two of them.
Oh my gosh!
I imagine for a lot of driving in movies, you have the same reaction.
Yes. Yeah.
Do you like? Is there any particular franchise that you think, even though it's not the focus of the franchise, they do typically do it well?
I mean, I do think that some of the James Bond films, they do. I do feel like most of those are pretty good. You know, the Fast and the Furious, I actually felt like. Well, I shouldn't say that. When they're in like shifting gears and hitting nitrous, some of that stuff was ridiculous.
It's all cartoon.
Yes, but some of the shots from outside of the vehicle, you know, I thought was kind of cool in the first film.
Yeah. What about when the Mustang starts real fast and the front lifts off like 4 feet in the ground?
Yeah, that's insane. Like, that's absolutely insane. Not saying there isn't cars that do that, but probably one of the coolest car chase scenes is a movie. I think it was done in the 70s. Bullet. Steve McQueen.
Yes.
Great movie. Yeah, cool movie. Steve McQueen's awesome. Absolutely incredible actor.
One of the Cars characters is based off of Steve McQueen.
Yes.
Joel McHale plays Steve McQueen in, I think, the Weird Al Yankovic biopic. Yeah.
Did you watch that?
So good.
Is it really?
Yeah.
See, I heard like mixed reviews on it. I talked to someone that said they picked it up and then just dropped it.
If you're a fan of Weird Al, the Weird Al Yankovic biopic is terrific.
Okay.
I can't tell you any more though because of spoilers, but it's check it out.
Yeah, okay. I'll have to check that out then. I do like Weird Al. He is pretty cool.
If people
down to
don't
earth
like,
guy.
if people don't like Weird Al, they've got problems.
I would agree with that.
Unsubscribe to this show right now.
Don't ever listen to us again.
Sorry, you were saying.
But yeah, Bullet. Just
okay.
It's an awesome movie. If you like a lot of was that
1968.
68. Wow.
1968.
Okay. I thought it might have been the car in there is historic. I think I forget which model Mustang it is. But I mean it's a great scene and it's cool. When the car chase scene is really well done. It's awesome.
It's a Ford Mustang versus a Dodge Charger.
Yeah. It's so good.
I've never seen it, but like it's come up on my radar a bunch of times, and I'm not sure why, but it has. But I mean, Steve McQueen is a legend.
Yeah, and I think Bullet is kind of a I don't even know. It's like a detective movie, kind of. It's like along those lines of Dirty Harry, I would say.
Oh yeah.
And
is Dirty Harry the one with the orangutan?
No, it's not.
You're thinking of King Kong?
No, that's a gorilla. There is a Clint Eastwood movie.
Yeah.
I can't think of the name of it. I know it's not.
Is it any which way but loose?
It is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Where he co-stars with an orangutan.
Yeah. Left hand something is like a line in it where he tells the
left hand Luke.
yeah. You know what? Maybe it's right turn or left turn Clyde, because I think the orangutan his last name might be Clyde.
And the orangutan's a driver?
It might be.
I haven't seen it. I just know that they starred in a movie together.
Yeah,
right turn, Clyde.
Is it?
Right turn,
Okay.
Clyde. Yep.
Yeah.
Any which way you can.
Oh, okay.
1980.
Okay.
Right turn, Clyde.
What's any which way but loose?
Any which way but loose.
I think it's the sequel.
Is it? Okay.
They did two.
They did two of these.
I'm pretty sure they did two.
Any which way but loose was 78. Any which way you can was 1980.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
okay. Wow.
Clyde.
Thank you, Internet.
Man. Thank God for Clint Eastwood.
Yeah. Oh, this is great. This is a great conversation.
I don't know. Did he finish his point?
I think I might. I think
because he was talking about car chase scenes.
Yeah.
Okay. He said,
yeah.
I got distracted by the monkey.
I have a tendency to just carry on and on and on, so you don't really know when it ends or when it started.
To our podcast.
Yeah. All right.
You fit right in.
Hefe, you got some wrap-up questions for us?
I sure do. I promise. Yep. Hold on. Yep. All right. So
any minute now.
Would you guys recommend this movie?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's an easy yes for me.
Yeah.
Okay. Moving on. Would you guys change the rating? It's currently rated PG-13. Not that it's going to change, but would you guys change it if you had to?
No, and I think you could even, like, if you got kids below the age of 13, I'd even give this PG. Like
The
you could
language
watch
is
this-
mild.
Yeah.
There's some suspense scenes and there's
nothing sensual in it.
no,
No.
there's some scenes of peril.
Yeah.
No violence.
Yeah, there's a wrestling scene with groceries.
Eh.
yeah, that is a hilarious
And
scene.
the wife just gets the chair out in the paper. You want a
absolutely great.
Coca-Cola?
Yeah.
That was beautiful.
Yeah, what is it called? What does he call it? Fizzy pop?
Fizzy pop.
Fizzy
yeah.
pop. Yeah.
So yeah, I actually agree. This is one of those ones where if
You could watch this with kids.
under 13, there's little to be worried about.
Yeah.
I would agree.
And it's a gripping movie from beginning to end.
Yeah.
It might be
Now-
too dry for kids,
Right,
but you
there
can watch
is-
it with kids.
There is drug use. Like there is substance. I mean, Shelby pops pills just
It's
like-
heart medication.
right, but he's doing it in a way where you can tell it's.
It's a prescription.
Okay, no, so you're defeating the purpose of this question here. We're talking about morals and stuff. Like, so just use discretion. He does use drugs, whether or not he uses it according to the prescription.
It should be noted he didn't break it up and snort it.
Yeah.
Right,
But
that is true. Yeah,
yeah.
Although
He
I do think
He
at
drank
one,
him out of the pill bottle.
and I do
Yeah.
think you see him chew on them at one point.
Well, he's
You're
always
right.
he's always chewing on something. I don't think there's a scene where he's not chew like his mouth is like you
Yes.
think he's on gum the whole doing
Brad
gum the
Pitt
whole time.
famously almost always eats in a movie that
Eats
he's
food.
in.
He has food in his hand for almost all of his
Yeah.
for most of it.
Loves
yeah.
to eat, as you can tell by looking at him.
Has this movie was released in 2019. Has this movie aged well?
Terrifically well.
Yeah,
I would agree.
especially for being a time
Period piece.
Time period piece. Yeah, yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
Okay. Last question: would this be in your personal top 250?
Well, for Brock, we already know because it's in his top. Well, I guess that had the caveat of racing movies.
Yeah.
Is it in your top 250 racing movies, Brock?
I would say so. I think even that terrible Stallone movie,
Yeah.
Driven, would be in the
Would-
top 250 because
Just out of
I don't think I've seen.
resources,
Yeah,
Would
Yeah.
make your top 250 of all movies.
absolutely, absolutely. I would even probably put it maybe top 50.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think this makes my top 250.
This was well done.
Yeah,
This is a good movie.
it is.
I don't have any issues. Like a lot of times I'll watch a movie like
the music's forgettable.
yeah.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. In a movie like this, I want to hear the sounds of the racing. I want to hear the sound effects. Not
And
the
they
sound
did
of
a
music.
great job with that.
Yeah.
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 There were I was in the driver's seat for some of these moments. Like
No.
I was. Nelson, I promise you, I was right there. I was right there. I called shotgun. I was right there.
That's still passenger seat.
Oh man, you're right. That's right. I can't drive stick. Shoot. No, this movie is great. It was
Yeah.
yeah. It created a cool vibe.
Yeah.
Anything else about the movie before we kind of wrap up Brock here and do some plugs?
One thing that never came up in the conversation when he gets when Ken Miles gets the offer from Ford to help.
Yes.
It's for $200 a day.
Yes.
In modern doll hairs, that's $2,000 a day.
Oh wow.
That's great.
Yeah,
That's a,
No
And
wonder she
I
was
would-
like
and so that he was
Yeah,
even
yeah, changed her
considering
mind.
it and not just deciding
yeah.
yeah.
or like telling his wife, "Hey, we have this offer." It's weird that like she brings it to him.
Yeah. And I will say, I mean, we've already wrapped up, so Nelson, you lost your chance. But I will say, I'm surprised you didn't bring up the scene about the red folder being passed around. I felt like there was an economic thing there that you probably would have like struck a chord with you, where he was talking about. Like,
Yeah.
we may be stepping backwards here in this episode, but I'm really like I didn't have within that quote. There was nothing there that struck me, but I listened to it and I'm like, Nelson's probably got something out of this.
I do. So I was kind of actually going to leave it lie.
Well, don't.
now.
Per Byland, Perbyland. He's an economist. He's a research fellow with the Mises Institute. As we've discussed before, I'm a big fan of the Mises Institute. His real center of focus is business management.
Mhm.
And he's written a lot about what amount of managerial class would exist in a free society. Kind of contrary to popular assumption, yes, we'd still have a lot of freelance individuals. Yes, we'd still have way more small businesses, but there would be still a lot of managerial class because management does provide a function that the market really needs. And so what Shelby is looking at there and comments on with that red folder touching so many hands before it reaches Henry Ford Jr. is kind of the incompetence that comes with a lot of management, the red tape that comes with that. When it's government, we don't call it managerial, we call it bureaucracy. And bureaucracy really slows down innovation. Just like what we saw with Leo Beebe, all those people that touched it, well, all of them also want to protect their jobs. So they're going to pull anything out of that folder that could harm them. And this is one of the big reasons that, because it slows down innovation so much, this is one of the big reasons that small businesses tend to gobble up market share of large corporations really quickly. And historically, typically, monopolies really don't show up in a vacuum. Monopolies show up because the government assists these companies, like we see with Amazon, where more than half their profit comes from contracts. And in a purely free market, companies like Ford, who don't, if they didn't have military contracts like he commented on, they'd lose a lot of market share to the Carroll Shelbys of the world, because as Carroll Shelby points out, when you've got a racing team, it doesn't run well with a committee. There's the old joke of the committee horse, right? If you get a committee together to draw a picture of a horse, it's going to have the body of a quarter horse, the legs of a zebra, the neck of a giraffe, the head of a unicorn, the wings of a pegasus, all of which are kind of horses, but the final image is not really a horse. It looks nothing like a horse. It's not a very good horse. If you want an example of what politics produce under committee, the Canadian national anthem is a really great example.
I just, the fact you mentioned the Canadian national anthem in a podcast just cracks me up.
It's a bad anthem. So yeah, I wasn't going to bring it up, but I appreciate you giving me the opportunity there, Jeff.
No, it's one of those things like you're way more well versed in a lot of these things than I am. I'm here to learn just as much as I am to add to the conversation. And when he was watching him, I had no clue what Shelby was watching, but then when he started talking about it, I'm like, oh yeah, this is Nelson to a T.
This is going to come
I
up.
don't understand what he's talking about, but he's going to bring it up. And I'm like, and I had here written Nelson quote, and I'm like, I'm just waiting for it.
Yeah.
And then so
that level of bureaucracy, that level of managerial overhead, really inhibits innovation, which is what entrepreneurs exist for. Entrepreneurs create and they innovate. As we discussed before the episode actually started, Broc, you're kind of in regulatory sectors of the banking industry. And one of the things you see with that, as you were saying, is a lot of these regulations don't exist to limit Chase Bank, for example. What they really end up doing is cutting off the lowest rungs of the ladder.
Yep.
And the big corporations do just fine with these regulations, but it inhibits smaller companies from coming in and taking up market share. So yeah.
Awesome. Cool.
There's my apple crate moment for the episode.
I appreciate that. Broc, is there anything you'd like to plug? Is like not saying you have to, but is there any way people, if people are interested in seeing you race or just going to a race in general, is there anything that you can connect to our audience if they're interested?
Yeah, I just recommend for anyone that enjoyed the movie or enjoys racing in general, get out and go support your local racetrack. Kind of talking about the big corporations and also the mom and pop stores, local racing. Is kind of the heart of racing in general. When you watch those guys on Sunday afternoon in NASCAR races, they're guys working, and women too, working construction jobs throughout the week and trying to live out their dream of racing. And, a lot of them get the opportunity to get that, jump to the next level. And you might not know it, but when you go to your local racetrack, you might be seeing the future Dale Earnhardt or Jeff Gordon. So, just get out there and support local racing.
Awesome.
Praise Dale.
Praise Dale. Raise hell.
Amen. I've actually never seen
Big dirt track in the sky.
I have not seen Talladega Nights. I need to. It's not. I have not seen the movie. So.
Is that it for us?
I think that's it.
Yeah,
All right.
I think so.
Thank you guys so much for listening. Broc, thank you for joining us. Join us in 1 week when we cover another biopic. It's also another kind of war epic, and it exists within the Indiana Jones universe. Lawrence of Arabia.
Yeehaw.
Thanks for listening. Bye.
Thanks for listening. We had a great time putting this together for you.
To join the conversation, find us on Facebook and Instagram at Silver Screen Biases.
And on Twitter at Screen Biases.
We believe in value for value, so if you found value in our show, we ask you to consider supporting us.
Links to our social media and support can be found in the show notes.